the Second and Third Temple, Christian eschatology, and the hope of prophecy fulfillment. This narrative is proudly brought to you by Polly Speaks For You. At Polly Speaks For You, we are committed to empowering individuals, especially those with disabilities or learning challenges, through innovative text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You is more than just software. It's a tool for self-expression, connecting people with the world in meaningful ways. By blending the richness of history with cutting-edge technology, Polly Speaks For You demonstrates that every voice, whether preserving the past or shaping the future, has the potential to inspire. While we strive to make the story engaging, our primary focus is on storytelling itself. The visuals are secondary. We're showcasing the remarkable capabilities of text-to-speech software that bring these stories to life. The Second Temple of Jerusalem has a rich and complex history that spans nearly 6 centuries, from its inception in the late 6th century BCE to its destruction by the Romans in 70 CE. This temple, central to Jewish worship and religious life, was both a continuation of the First Temple, Solomon's Temple, and a symbol of Jewish resilience, as it was constructed after the Babylonian exile and stood during tumultuous times under various empires. 1. The First Temple and Babylonian exile, 957 to 586 BCE. Before the Second Temple, the First Temple, also known as Solomon's Temple, stood in Jerusalem. It was constructed by King Solomon around 957 BCE as a permanent dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant and a center for Jewish religious rituals. For over 4 centuries, it served as the primary worship site for the Israelites. However, in 586 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II besieged Jerusalem, leading to the city's capture and the complete destruction of the First Temple. The Jewish people were exiled to Babylon, marking the beginning of what is known as the Babylonian captivity. For 70 years, the Jewish exiles lived in Babylon, where they experienced profound religious and cultural upheaval. 2. The return from exile and the decree of Cyrus, 539 BCE. In 539 BCE, the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great defeated the Babylonians and took control of their vast territories, including the region of Judah. Unlike the Babylonians, who had exiled subjugated peoples, Cyrus had a policy of allowing displaced peoples to return to their homelands. He issued the Cyrus Decree in 538 BCE, which allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. The decree is recorded in the Book of Ezra and marked the beginning of the Second Temple period. 3. Rebuilding the Second Temple, 520 to 516 BCE. The first group of Jewish exiles, led by Zerubbabel, returned to Jerusalem in 538 BCE. However, rebuilding efforts did not start immediately due to opposition from local populations, internal disputes, and economic hardship. The foundations for the Second Temple were laid around 536 BCE, but construction stalled for nearly 2 decades. The Jewish community faced discouragement, leading to delays. In 520 BCE, the prophets Haggai and Zechariah urged the people to complete the temple's construction, emphasizing the religious and spiritual significance of the endeavor. Under the Persian king Darius I, the work resumed in earnest, and the Second Temple was completed in 516 BCE, exactly 70 years after the destruction of the First Temple. This fulfillment of prophecy was seen as a divine sign, and the temple was rededicated with great ceremony. Though much smaller and less ornate than Solomon's Temple, the Second Temple became the new focal point of Jewish religious life. The temple resumed its central functions, including sacrifices, festivals, and daily offerings, under the supervision of the priests and Levites. 4. Challenges and restorations under foreign rule. The Second Temple period is characterized by Jewish life under the rule of successive foreign empires, including the Persians, Greeks, and eventually Romans. These political shifts often affected the temple and Jewish autonomy. Persian period, 516 to 332 BCE. Under Persian rule, the Jews enjoyed relative peace and religious freedom. The Persians allowed the Jewish high priests to manage the temple, and Jerusalem remained the religious and cultural center of the Jewish people. Hellenistic period, 332 to 167 BCE. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, ushering in the Hellenistic period. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals, and the region of Judea fell under the control of the Ptolemies, Egypt, and later the Seleucids, Syria. Under Seleucid rule, the Jews faced severe religious persecution, especially during the reign of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, 175 to 164 BC. Antiochus attempted to force Hellenistic culture and religion upon the Jewish people, even desecrating the Second Temple by placing a statue of the Greek god Zeus inside it and sacrificing pigs on the altar, 168 BCE. This act of desecration led to the Maccabean Revolt. Maccabean Revolt and the Hasmonean Dynasty, 167 to 63 BCE. In response to Antiochus's desecration, a group of Jewish rebels known as the Maccabees, led by Judah Maccabee, launched a successful revolt against the Seleucid Empire. In 164 BCE, the Maccabees recaptured Jerusalem and rededicated the Second Temple, an event commemorated in the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. The Hasmonean dynasty established an independent Jewish state and ruled Judea for about a century. 5. Herod's expansion and renovation, 20 BC. In 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey conquered Jerusalem, bringing Judea under Roman control. Although the Jews were allowed to maintain the Second Temple, political instability persisted. In 37 BCE, Herod the Great, a client king of Rome, ascended to power. Herod sought to legitimize his rule by undertaking a grand reconstruction of the Second Temple, vastly expanding and beautifying the structure. The renovations began in 20 BCE and continued for decades. Herod's version of the Second Temple became one of the most magnificent structures in the ancient world, with white marble, gold, and vast courtyards. Herod's temple, as it is sometimes called, was much larger and more ornate than the original Second Temple. The expansion included the Court of the Gentiles, a large area surrounding the temple where non-Jews could enter. However, the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum, remained restricted to the Jewish high priest, who could enter only once a year on Yom Kippur. 6. The Roman period and destruction, 70 CE. The Roman period was fraught with tensions between the Jews and their Roman overlords. Heavy taxation, political corruption, and Roman interference in Jewish religious affairs led to growing discontent among the Jewish population. This tension culminated in the First Jewish-Roman War, 66 to 73 CE. In 70 CE, after a brutal siege of Jerusalem, the Roman general Titus captured the city and destroyed the Second Temple. The destruction of the temple was a catastrophic event for the Jewish people. The temple was not only the center of religious worship, but also a symbol of national identity. With its destruction, Jewish religious life changed dramatically, leading to the development of Rabbinic Judaism, which focused on study, prayer, and adherence to Jewish law rather than temple-based worship. 7. Aftermath and significance. The destruction of the Second Temple marked the beginning of the Jewish diaspora. Many Jews were killed, enslaved, or dispersed throughout the Roman Empire. The remaining Jewish community continued to mourn the loss of the temple, which remains a central theme in Jewish prayer and eschatology. To this day, Jews commemorate the destruction of both the First and Second Temples on Tisha B'Av, an annual day of mourning. The Western Wall, also known as the Wailing Wall, a remnant of the Second Temple complex, remains one of the holiest sites in Judaism. 8. Hope for the Third Temple. In Jewish eschatology, the belief in the eventual rebuilding of the Third Temple is deeply rooted. Many religious Jews believe that the Messiah will come and rebuild the temple, ushering in an era of peace and divine presence. The longing for the Third Temple is expressed in Jewish prayers, and its rebuilding is seen as a symbol of redemption and national restoration. Conclusion. The history of the Second Temple is one of resilience, renewal, and faith. Despite political upheavals, foreign domination, and eventual destruction, the Second Temple remained at the heart of Jewish life for over half a millennium. Its legacy continues to shape Jewish identity and religious practice, serving as a powerful symbol of the Jewish people's endurance and hope for the future. The hope of the Third Temple holds significant connotations in Christian theology, particularly within certain branches of eschatology, the study of end times. For many Christians, the concept of a rebuilt Third Temple in Jerusalem is closely tied to prophecies about the second coming of Christ and the end of the age. These interpretations vary widely, depending on different theological traditions, such as premillennialism, dispensationalism, and other views of biblical prophecy. 1. Biblical prophecies and the Third Temple. In Christian theology, the anticipation of a Third Temple is primarily rooted in biblical prophecies that are found in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Several passages in the Bible reference either the temple itself or its destruction and rebuilding, and these have been interpreted in different ways over the centuries. Old Testament prophecies. Ezekiel 40-48. The prophet Ezekiel describes a detailed vision of a future temple, which some Christians and Jews interpret as a blueprint for the Third Temple. In Christian eschatology, this temple is often linked to the millennial kingdom, a future period when Christ reigns on earth. Daniel 9 verses 24-27. This passage contains the prophecy of the 70 weeks, which is often interpreted as referring to events leading to the coming of the Messiah. The mention of the destruction of the temple and the abomination of desolation is often associated with the Second Temple's destruction in 70 CE, but some Christians believe it also refers to events that will precede the construction of the Third Temple. New Testament references. Matthew 24 verses 15-16. Jesus refers to the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, warning about future destruction. Some Christians believe this points to the desecration of a future temple, implying the existence of a third temple during the end times. 2 Thessalonians 2 verses 3-4. The Apostle Paul speaks of the man of lawlessness, often understood as the Antichrist, who will set himself up in the temple of God and proclaim himself to be God. For many Christians, this suggests the construction of a third temple before the rise of the Antichrist. Revelation 11 verses 1-2. In the book of Revelation, John is told to measure the temple of God. Some Christian interpretations see this as evidence of a future temple being rebuilt as part of the events surrounding Christ's return. 2. Theological interpretations of the Third Temple in Christian eschatology. There are different views within Christianity regarding the significance of a rebuilt Third Temple in relation to end-time prophecy. Premillennialism and dispensationalism. Many adherents of premillennialism and dispensationalism, particularly within evangelical and fundamentalist Christian circles, hold that the construction of a third temple is a key event that will occur before the second coming of Christ. Premillennialism teaches that Christ will return to earth and reign for a literal 1,000-year period, the millennium. In this view, the Third Temple is often seen as a physical place where sacrifices and rituals will be restored as part of the Jewish people's covenant with God. Dispensationalism further divides human history into different dispensations or eras in which God interacts with humanity in distinct ways. Dispensationalists believe that the rebuilding of the temple is necessary for the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, particularly regarding the tribulation period, a time of great suffering and upheaval before Christ's return, and the rise of the Antichrist, who is expected to desecrate the temple before being defeated by Christ. For these Christians, the existence of a third temple would signal the imminent fulfillment of key biblical prophecies, including the return of Christ and the establishment of his kingdom on earth. This belief has even led to contemporary interest in the possibility of rebuilding the temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a site that is currently occupied by the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, a significant challenge given the religious and political tensions in the region. Amillennialism and postmillennialism. Other Christian traditions, such as amillennialism and postmillennialism, hold different views on the significance of a physical temple in eschatology. Amillennialism interprets the millennium described in Revelation as symbolic rather than literal. In this view, the temple of God is often understood spiritually, representing the church or the collective body of believers. According to this interpretation, there is no need for a physical third temple, as Christ has already fulfilled the sacrificial system through his death and resurrection. Postmillennialism teaches that Christ will return after a golden age in which the church gradually transforms the world. In this view, like amillennialism, the physical temple is not necessary for the fulfillment of prophecy, as the focus is on the spiritual transformation of humanity. 3. Jesus as the fulfillment of the temple. Another key aspect of Christian theology related to the temple is the belief that Jesus Christ himself is the ultimate fulfillment of the temple. According to the New Testament, Jesus declared that his body was the true temple of God. In John 2 verses 19 to 21, Jesus said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." His listeners thought he was referring to the physical temple in Jerusalem, but the gospel clarifies that he was speaking of his body. For many Christians, this signifies that Jesus, through his death and resurrection, replaced the need for a physical temple where sacrifices were offered. Additionally, the book of Hebrews elaborates on the idea that Christ's sacrifice was once and for all, rendering the old sacrificial system obsolete. Hebrews 9 verses 24 to 28. From this perspective, Jesus is seen as the ultimate high priest who mediates between God and humanity, making the physical temple no longer necessary. 4. Contemporary Christian views on the Third Temple. The idea of rebuilding the Third Temple has garnered considerable attention in modern Christian eschatology, especially in evangelical communities. The establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948 and the recapture of Jerusalem in 1967 have been viewed by some Christians as steps toward the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Many Christians believe that the rebuilding of the Third Temple will be a central event during the end times, and some actively support efforts by Jewish groups who seek to reconstruct the temple. For them, the temple's reconstruction would signify the beginning of the tribulation period, the rise of the Antichrist, and ultimately the return of Christ to establish his kingdom. However, other Christians, especially those who adhere to more symbolic or spiritual interpretations of eschatology, see the emphasis on a third temple as unnecessary. They believe that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross has made the need for a physical temple obsolete, and that the focus should instead be on the church as the spiritual temple of God. Conclusion. The hope of the Third Temple carries deep connotations in Christian theology, particularly in eschatological beliefs about the second coming of Christ. While some Christians view the rebuilding of the temple as a key event that will unfold in the last days, others see the concept of the temple as having been fulfilled through Christ's death and resurrection. These varying interpretations continue to influence Christian thought and expectations regarding the end times, as well as the significance of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount in both religious and geopolitical contexts. If you're enjoying this story, please remember to hit like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating content that educates and empowers. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software and to support our dyslexic-friendly initiative, visit www.paulaspeaks4u.co.za. Drop a comment if you want more information. Thank you for watching this video.